Hello and welcome back to my channel. I already posted several videos on specific topics that I talked about with Mike Israetel, but a lot of you asked to post the complete interview. Well, here it is. Stay tuned. I am curious, what's your take on reverse pyramid training? By that I don't mean the classic reverse pyramid training style of 3 sets with the first being 5 reps, then 8 and then 10 or 12. But I rather mean this, for example. When I have done 3 sets of 8 reps bench press, for example, and I feel that in the 4th set I will not be able to perform 8 reps with good form and the same weight. Is there any value in doing this, for example, 10 to 12 reps with a lighter weight? Or would it be better to stick with the same heavier weight and do, for example, only 5 or 6 reps? I'm curious about that already a very long time, if there's any value in doing more sets with lighter weights. Like just junk volume, as you would call it.
Sure. So, rather than come at this problem from looking at it and trying to see if we can justify it or if we can't, we can go the other way around. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
We're going to go the other way around and develop really quickly a logical structure of training. And once we have that developed, we can then check it against the problem and see how we can solve it. So in training for hypertrophy, the predominant factor in training that we want is volume. And secondarily to that, to some extent, we want to make sure that we are working in certain repetition ranges to stimulate probably certain faster or slower twitch muscle fibers. We want to make sure we're in those ranges sufficiently. So let me give you an example. If we have a muscle that we happen to know in our body is relatively faster twitch, perhaps the hamstrings, just as an example, we've sort of ascertained from a lot of experimentation in the past and reading some research that maybe 2/3 of the volume we put in to the hamstrings should be faster twitch stimulative volume, and thus under 10 repetitions per set. And then, because the hamstrings clearly have slower twitch fibers as well that need to be hypertrophied, perhaps the remainder of our volume, 1/3 of it, may be done between 10 and 30 reps per set, with probably most of that 20%-ish, 23% between 10 and 20 reps, and maybe just 10% of it per week, 20 to 30 rep range. So now that we're training the hamstrings and we're doing this much volume, and we've chopped it up into this much of it is going to be up to 10 reps, this much is 10 to 20, and this much is 20 to 30, we can now try to answer the question of if we're in this 0 to 6 to 10 rep range, right? And we're questioning, we're sort of we got so fatigued, we still have more volume to do, right? We have to meet some volume because it's a critical hypertrophy, but we're too tired to do, let's say, sets of 8. Should we lower the weight and do sets of 12? No. Why? Because we have a certain amount of volume we have targeted up to the 10 rep range. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So that immediately cuts out the lower to 12 answer as wrong.
Okay.
With me so far?
Yes. Yes, I hear you. Okay. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, there's some delay on my end. So then that's wrong. So then we can ask, okay, we're doing sets of 8. Can we lower the weight just to do sets of 10? Yes, technically that would meet our criteria, but we could say, faster twitch muscles really probably do go better with sets of 8 than 10. Ideally, we want not to just 10, 10, 10, 10. That's kind of on the borderline. Maybe a better solution is to lower the weight enough to just keep doing sets of 8. Right? So that makes a lot of sense because, yes, the answer in that question is yes, the reverse pyramid style of training or what are called down sets are absolutely valid as long as you're hitting either within your target rep range or the exact reps that you were hitting. So we're not going to, because sometimes you feel super defeated by weight. And you're like, wow, that was heavy. I'm going to go down a bunch and just do sets of 15 instead of sets of 8. Like, you didn't think that through, right? If you had planned 15s as a part of your spectrum of training, then that's okay. But, if you didn't plan that and then you're exiting way outside the range, that's not the best thing. That's for hypertrophy training. It's a different question for strength training. For strength training, the volume is important, but is probably a little bit secondary or maybe tied with intensity, right? How much force we're producing. So at that point, when you are lifting, let's say, heavy sets of 5, if you reduce the weight on the bar to keep getting sets of 5, you're sort of very arbitrarily choosing this number 5, and you're lowering the weight. Now you're producing less force, which means that the kinds of adaptations you're getting are not forceful enough to get you what you want. You've previously calculated that I need this much work at this average level of force, which is going to get me strong. The work is important, but the average force is just as important. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if we just do this and say, well, we got the volume in, that's nice, but now you're not strength training anymore. You're just doing sets of 5. You could do sets of 5 curls after a whole bicep workout, and it's going to be with 10 kilos each, and they're just going to be not strength training. It's too light. So there, the correct answer is probably going to be something like lowering repetitions. So if you can't do sets of 5 anymore, keep the weight the same, but do sets of 3, right? And then you'll have to do some more sets of 3 to get the volume to where you need it to be, and then you've succeeded. Now, that answer is the technically correct answer, but that has to come under the huge examination of, is this a good idea in your program? Not just with respect to this workout. What about the next workout, right? So for example, you are getting a little bit too weak in your workout to continue to do sets of 5. The question isn't, okay, let's adjust like Dr. Mike said and do sets of 3 and get the work in and succeed, right? The real question is, okay, knowing that I can potentially do that, what is that going to, what is the fatigue state going to be later in the week for my other workouts or the next week for the same work? Am I going to be able to survive my progression? And even as importantly is the fact that I cannot do what I predicted that I could. Is that indicative of my poor recovery state or my poor adaptive state? Maybe I shouldn't be pushing it, right? It's kind of like, let me give you a quick example. You have to eat a certain number of calories per day in order to gain weight. You know what that number is. You're eating so much food that you start throwing up often. But whatever you throw up, you flush down the toilet, you make more food, and you re-eat it. Now you're starting to throw up blood. Is it a good idea for you to be like, well, clearly I'm throwing up blood, so that's probably even more calories, so I should just eat more? No, you throwing up blood is probably a real root cause of something bad that's probably affecting your appetite, which is probably the reason why you have to eat that much more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is we have to really, we can potentially use the tool of increasing our volume by keeping the same intensity for strength training and increasing our volume by at least staying in our same rep range with hypertrophy training. But what we cannot do is use those tools blindly to continue to follow the plan. We have to analyze, like, okay, what's going on? Like, for example, your recovery is great, your adaptation is great, you had a rough night of sleep, just randomly, like the neighbor's dog just wouldn't shut the fuck up. And you're getting great sleep tonight, you're just like on vacation, all your food is good, your supplementation is good, and you come to the workout after that rough night of sleep and you just can't get through your sets of 5. Yeah, fuck it, do sets of 3. You'll recover just fine. But if it's like, if it's week 2 of a training plan that lasts 6 weeks and you're already having trouble under ideal conditions, why would you make it? Is just too much. You probably did too much last week, your program's probably too much. So does that answer your question sufficiently?
Okay, thanks. How can one be working out consistently when traveling a lot, like you do probably? Are you always planning deloads when you're away, or can you work out consistently in hotel gyms? What's your general advice? Sure.
To the extent that you are able to do it, I would plan less intense, especially, and potentially less voluminous times of training around travel. But you are not always able to do that. So point number 1, try to plan deloads or something easier when you're traveling. Point number 2, if you cannot plan them, then sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you have to train, your training cycle is just in the middle and you're traveling. The next point is you have to take action. You have to take the reins, so to speak. I don't want to, make too big of a point of it, but you have to. You can't show up to the hotel room and be like, all right, let's see what we have in the gym. No, you got to find a gym outside of the hotel 9 times out of 10. The internet's amazing because it can tell you all the gyms in the area already. So you know them. And here's the big thing, not just finding a gym, prioritizing your workout. Let's say you have business meetings from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. when you're traveling to Hong Kong. Your internal clock is already fucked up, so it's a lost cause. What you're going to do, because you're probably awake then anyway, is wake up at 5 a.m., go to a good gym that you heard about online, get your workout and get your post-workout shake, come home, put on your business suit, go to your business meetings, come home, crash, go to sleep, and then repeat. So you have to look at your trip schedule, plan where you're going to be working out when, and do it. Does that make sense? Like, that's huge advice right there. Because a lot of people, I used to coach volleyball players, and they would say, hey, I'm going on vacation on spring break. I won't be able to lift weights. Not all of them. Most of them say that. And we're like, oh, where are you going? And before we let them answer, we're like, because if it's anywhere in the Western world, there are gyms within 5 kilometers of where you're going. Don't be crazy. There's always a place to train. So planning, forethought can get you most of the way. Here's another tip. If you're going to go to that kind of gym, what I would say is keep the volume similar, but lower the intensity on average. Why? When you're traveling, when it's a different gym, when you don't have all your equipment with you, when you might be a little bit more in a rush or just more in a high cortisol sort of frantic state, new gym, new everything, it took you longer to walk to this place, and other cars are driving on the other side of the street, crazy stuff like that, you are more likely to become injured, especially because of the water displacement that occurs with travel. Travel tends to dehydrate you to some considerable extent, and that's not good. So I would say is if you have if you've planned 200 kilogram leg presses for sets of 10, and then squats with 150K for sets of 10 after, maybe drop the leg presses to 150K and just rep out super high reps, really exhaust your quads, and then squat with 100 or 110K, tons of volume. You're going to get plenty of a stimulus. It's going to get you nice and messed up. It's going to cause hypertrophy, but it won't be 205 or trying to hit a new PR in leg press when you're weight. That is how a lot of injuries happen, unaccustomed to equipment, not in your best state. Something happens, now you're in another country and you're hurt, which really sucks, right? So those are my big tips. Lastly, if you are stuck in a hotel gym, they're called intensity techniques. They're correctly called that, I guess, relative intensity techniques. Can get you a lot of the way. So for example, if you're stuck in a hotel gym, what you can do is take the heaviest weights they have, which might be 20 kilograms. Take the weights into the hallway. Do walking lunges for a giant set, which are a marathon set, which means you do 100 total steps. And if you can't do 100, you stop for 3 or 4 seconds between each time that you almost fail and keep going for another 3 or 4 steps, and then stop and keep going. That'll fuck you up beyond belief. You wish you had access to a real gym so you didn't have to suffer that much. As soon as that set is over, you do body weight squats with your arms stretched out until complete concentric failure, however many reps that takes you. And then you repeat that for another 3 or 4 myo reps right after that, sort of myo sets, right? So legs, finished, okay? Push-ups, close grip, again, giant set. Dips between chairs or on a bench, giant set, super low rest, super high volumes. There's not much you can't get done in the short term. This is not a good sustainable way to train, but very low rest between sets and just more sets is going to get you almost everywhere you need to go with hypertrophy. You'll get the pumps of your life, and you'll be like, wow, whoever said this was easy, because people come into a hotel gym and say, there's no way I can get a good workout here. Oh boy, I bet you can. And there's just contracting those rest times and increasing the number of sets can really, even if it's high reps, not a big deal. Because it's high reps at first, right? When your set times are really contracted, or your rest times, at some point it's sets of 3 and 4 reps. And your fastest twitch motor units, your biggest ones, have to turn on, because otherwise you just don't get up. So it's really, those are my big travel tips.
Okay, thanks. Great advice. I hear a lot of beginners complain about their delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS. and often they recommend each other to take non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen and Voltaren and things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Those drugs have been shown pretty conclusively to interfere with muscle growth because the inflammatory processes are probably not necessary for muscle growth, but helpful to muscle growth. So you're just not going to grow as much. It's kind of like you trained, you have all this pain, and now you're taking ibuprofen to cancel out some of the gains. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I wouldn't get in the habit of that. What I would do is see if there's no good reason that beginners should be getting any more soreness than advanced individuals. I'm going to repeat that because a lot of people are going to think that's crazy. There's no good reason that beginners should be getting more sore than advanced individuals. People are going to say, how the hell is that possible? Because it's all about misestimating and mismatching dosing to training level of development. For example, you say, okay, what's a good program for a beginner? Say, what's a good program for an advanced lifter? Say 3x10 squats, 3x10 leg press, 3x10 leg extension for quads. Fine program. So that's fine. Say, okay, what's a good program for a beginner? And they'll say, same thing, but with less weight. Get the fuck out of here. 3 sets of anything remotely close to failure, if you're unaccustomed to training, is going to nuke you. It's going to give you so much muscle damage. You'll spend most of your resources recovering, if not all, from muscle damage and barely grow at all. As a matter of fact, there's very good reason to believe that one of the reasons that beginners don't grow as quickly as advanced people in the very first month or two of training is because they just get this, most exercise science program designs in research are like just 3x10, like 3x10 in week 1, 3x10 in week 8. 3x10 in week 1 is the end of the world. 3x10 in week 8 is a fine training stimulus that's right in the middle of where you can recover from. So what I would say is if it's your first time lifting, you come in and you literally only practice technique with barely any weights. And you stay like 10 reps shy of failure. Because you're not used to moving like that, you're going to get a little bit sore from like barely nothing. And you're like, holy shit. And you're going to say, well, there's no way that caused muscle growth. Fuck yeah, it did. Cardio causes muscle growth in the first 2 months of training. Once you are just a little bit sore from training, whenever you heal, you come back and you maybe do just a few more sets, like 1 or 2 more sets on everything, and keep practicing the technique with almost no weight. You'll get, again, just a little bit sore. And then slowly you start putting on weight on the bar, and then you just keep being that little bit sore. I think maybe with the exception of the last week of training before deloading, you should probably be intermediately sore your entire training career. Because if you're not sore at all, that's probably okay, but you maybe will train a little harder and probably get a little more out of it. Like, and I mean even sore, like just not even DOMs, but like the day later. You know, like if you train your biceps the day later, they're kind of like, ooh, I feel it. Like if you can't even say that, you're probably not training hard enough, right? But if you are crazy sore all the time, you're just taking resources away from growth into recovery. So beginners have a solution that's the fucking greatest solution in the world that's not ibuprofen. Don't train as much, and you'll get all the benefits. You'll get more benefits. So there's my views on that.
Anti-inflammatory drugs for real joint pain. Is there any point in taking it, or should you avoid it and take paracetamol, dafalgan, or something like that instead?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, if you have, it's between you and your doctor, your medical doctor, because here's this. There's 2 types of diagnoses you could potentially make. One is there's something wrong with your joints that is fixable by training alteration, rehab, whatever, surgery. And then the answer is don't take drugs like that because you just have to deal with the problem. The other kind of diagnosis is like, look, you just like bone on bone, you're 57 years old, who gives a shit, like take the anti-inflammatories and you can keep training for more years. But if you don't take them, you just won't ever train. And if you take them in low doses and you're intelligent about it, they'll be fine. If it's the second answer, the answer is yes. If it's the first answer, the answer is no. The thing is, probably about 90% of the people that take these drugs are not in the second group of people. They're in the first group of people. And like they'll be like, for example, they'll say, hey, my knees hurt from leg pressing, so I'm taking Advil or ibuprofen. And they say, okay, well, let me see your leg press technique. And you watch it, and you're like, God damn it, I can tell you why your knees are hurting. Like, that sucks. So always, whenever I have any kind of joint pain, I immediately try to ascertain what is the nature of this pain and can I do something about it from a training alteration perspective. Almost always the answer is yes. And when that answer is yes, then I don't ever take ibuprofen. If you have an injury which is just completely there's intractable and that's how it's going to be, the doctors can say, look, it's if you take ibuprofen around your workout, you'll be fine. And otherwise you just won't be able to train. Then you can do it.
How does one stay motivated to work out? Eat clean, do everything it takes while getting more experience. That's a bit of a psychological question maybe. And how do you stay motivated personally?
Man, I think if you're experienced enough, you should probably be passionate about the stuff by that point. You should actually like it. And because you like it, you don't have to stay motivated. Like you can ask, this is a really perverse analogy, but I'll make it anyway. Let's say, masturbation. Can you imagine asking someone how they stay motivated to jack off? Like, what? I like jacking off. It feels great. But, well, sometimes you got to push the limits, and you don't have to, you still have to jack off if you don't want to. They're like, well, I just don't jack off then. They're like, so then you're really inconsistent. They're like, no, I jack off all the time because it's great. So when working out is something you love to do, motivation is not really much of a factor. And sometimes you don't feel like going to the gym and this and that, and then you just kind of have to be like, you know what, I have a commitment to my training and I want things in the long term to work out really well and all these gains and all this greatness. And, it's like brushing your teeth. Not tons of people like to brush their teeth, but if you don't brush your teeth, all these things happen that you don't want. And if you do brush your teeth, all these great things happen. So you just do it. Kind of same idea there. It's not a ton of motivation required. Beginners are very, very concerned with motivation, but advanced individuals, if they're feeling like motivation is really low for extended periods of time, I would say pick a different goal and train for something different than you usually train. That's something that's exciting to you, something that you like to do for its own sake. You don't need motivation to eat tasty food. You don't need the motivation to go on dates with attractive members of the same or opposite sex because you actually like them. So if you like training, great. By the time you're advanced, you should like your training. And if you don't, you got to work on finding training you like. And potentially, some people I used to like training, but now I like to play golf. And they look at me and I'm like, okay. And they're like, there's something wrong with that. They're like, no, what the hell's wrong with golf? Fuck training. Training's a giant waste of time if you don't like it. Can you imagine if someone's lifting and powerlifting 5 days a week, 2-hour workouts, and they're like, I hate this. You'd be like, why the fuck are you doing it? Nobody pays you to do this stuff, right? It's like, so imagine someone super brilliant who could be a great coder or a great lawyer, and they're starting their first day of medical school, and they're like, I got to get through medical school. They're like, why? I don't know, I just have to do it. I hate this. You're like, maybe you shouldn't do it. It's a self-solving problem.
Yeah, maybe I should rephrase that and use the word underlying goals or reasons why to work out. For example, when you're 16 years old, you maybe start working out to look good for the opposite sex, or maybe you just do it like when I was 16, I started to be stronger for my judo competition back then. And when you're getting older, you need other underlying reasons. For example, now at my age, I do it for health reasons, longevity. Sure. Of course, I still like doing it as well, but reasons must change over time, right? Yeah,
well, and maybe the reasons can change over time, but if you like the process of training, you don't really need reasons. Why does somebody masturbate? Is it a good reason to masturbate? Not really. I mean, you'd be fine if you didn't do it, other than getting arrested or whatever. But, old joke. So, there's lots of things we don't need to do, but we do them because we like them. If you're advanced and if you're older, you better like training. And if you don't, weight training is not mandatory. Go do something else you like. Go do CrossFit, do swimming, do golf, do judo, do a trillion other things that can keep you in shape, healthy, and fit, no problem. And that's it. And the goals, you can absolutely play around with different goals. I think a really cool goal when you're much older than yourself is, I want to be able to be completely self-sustaining and functioning all the way up until the day I die. And that's a sweet goal. You look around at other people that are your age and they're kind of decrepit and they're sitting around, they can't even stand up. You're like, fuck that. That's a real good motivation. But you don't always need to have that. Here's the thing, the kind of people that train for a lifetime, they almost never have that motivation. They just like training. I had one of my grandfathers, or great uncle, he died in his 90s. He was walking somewhere and he just figured he was going to die. So he sat next to a tree and just leaned back and died right there. They found him just sitting upright. He walked everywhere and gardened his entire life and picked stuff up and moved it around. He was never inactive. Why? He didn't like motivation. He just liked doing that shit. So there it is. Find something you like and let it kill you, brother. I hate that stupid fucking quote. But I prefer it didn't kill me. That'd be ideal. But does that make sense? So really just find what you enjoy. Find enjoyment in training. And you don't have to ask a motivation question.
I hear Eric Helms and Abel talk repeatedly about auto-regulating food intake. But I seem to have always a hard time letting go of tracking, since I seem to be a bit neurotic and I get best results if I stick to it. So do you still track calories and protein, or do you just do it in your head, or only when cutting, for example?
Yeah, so like I track most of the time, but my degree of tracking is I track every meal's macros. So I type it in my phone, proteins, carbs, fats, and that's it. Actually don't track calories at all because macros completely proxy calories. So it's two birds with one stone. What I will say is if macro counting is bringing you no anxiety whatsoever, and it's just something you're so used to doing that it happens automatically, track away. If macro tracking is bringing you real anxiety, makes you feel really constrained, then sometimes you can get away from tracking macros and just take a little macro tracking vacation. Especially in a maintenance phase or something like a week of just maintenance eating, especially not right after a cutting phase, maybe like right after a massing phase. Like I did a short week over this past holidays where I basically didn't track anything in my macros for one whole week. I just didn't track macros. I still knew how to eat because I just eat protein-based meals, but surprisingly, I actually underate a little bit. It was weird not tracking macros, but I felt really rested. And when I came back to tracking macros earlier this past week, I felt great. So I think it's cool to get away from macro tracking. But if it doesn't bring you a lot of anxiety, you're just so used to doing it that it's just second nature, keep doing it. Who cares?
Okay, and I heard RP is coming out with an app as well to track. What's the difference with MyFitnessPal, for example?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So RP's app is out. Currently, it's available for a 2-week free trial, and then it costs money after that. Not a lot of money, and it's like going to be close to what the conversion rate for euros is, 10, 12 euros a month or something like that, unless the European Union taxes you for apps, which it probably does, so it's back to 15. But the difference is the RP Diet app is not a tracker. There's actually nowhere in the app currently, this might change later to some small extent, there's nowhere in the app currently where you type in what you ate. There's no macro tracking. What it is you tell the app when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you train, how hard you train, and what your goals are. And it literally develops a meal schedule for you and tells you when to eat. You pick your protein sources, you pick your carbohydrate sources and your fat sources, and for each meal, and it tells you exactly how much of those things to eat to meet your goals. You weigh in with the app multiple times a week, and it updates your diet for you, changes your macros for you so that you stay on track for your goals. You don't have to do any thinking. You just have to do what the app says. All you pick are your favorite foods. The app does the rest. So it's not like MyFitnessPal at all. You don't have to scroll through tons of lists. You don't have to track stuff. It is a diet coach in your pocket. So it's definitely something pretty interesting.
Okay, very interesting. I'm going to try that.
Cool.
What's your take on Metformin for bodybuilding and maybe also for anti-aging? Because I know it's used for anti-aging properties as well.
Yeah, so for anti-aging, Metformin is probably very reliable and a very good idea. For bodybuilding, if you're a drug-free bodybuilder, and if you're not using growth hormone, Metformin has questionable benefits, which means I'm not sure if it has benefits. On the one hand, Metformin is going to increase your glucose or insulin sensitivity, both technically, and that's very good. On the other hand, the pathway through which it works is an AMPK pathway, which is technically a catabolic pathway, or parts of it sure as hell are. So we're not sure what the total net effect on musculature is. The primary users of Metformin are growth hormone users, because growth hormone causes quite a bit of insulin resistance, and Metformin is designed to cancel that out, so you get all of the benefits of growth hormone minus the cost of insulin resistance, so that almost certainly increases anabolism in growth hormone users. But in individuals not taking growth hormone, I'm not sure if Metformin is helpful. It could very well be, I just don't have the confidence to say that. Though for life extension purposes, it's almost certainly helpful.
Okay, great. And about another chemical or type of chemical, I heard you talk about SARMs a while ago, and I remember you saying that you didn't even believe they were available on the market then. And since a test of random samples showed a lot of them did not even contain SARMs or even harmful substances like prohormones. Anything changed since then? Because on YouTube, I hear a lot of people always talk about their experiences with them and how great they are, that they mimic testosterone without having the side effects of real anabolics.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have the potential to do that. It's just if you take SARMs, you got to make sure you're actually taking SARMs. So whatever you have, whatever pill box they send you, you got to send it to a laboratory and they got to mass spec it and send it back to you and say, this is what you have. Most of the time, it's not what you have. So if you get SARMs from the real source, I hear they're pretty effective. I have no experience with them, nor do I know anyone personally who's taken them. You know, potentially they're going to be really sweet. It just has to, the market has to evolve for a couple more years, I think, so that there's reliable sources of SARMs. And people have a lot of experience with them. They're much weaker than people thought they were going to be, and they have more side effects than people thought they were going to be, but they might be pretty good. So I sure as hell wouldn't run out and get SARMs right now. If I was anyone, I'd wait for a little while and let the more adventurous people experiment with them until they became sort of rock solid.
Okay, and I hear in the United States talking a lot about peptides as well, like the growth hormones, secretagogues, for example, butamirin. Do you have any thoughts on that? Or
I know very little about peptides, but I know that some of them are very effective for various purposes. For example, the peptide TB500 is very effective in injury healing. So, you know, there's that. Peptides are, again, a very new market, but I think there's some really good stuff going on. I can't be any more specific than that. I'm just not my expert area, unfortunately.
Okay. So last time we talked, we also talked about these endocrine disrupting chemicals, you know, and I talked to Dr. Keith Nichols, who is an expert in TRT and everything about that, on endocrine disrupting chemicals that are all around us. And he also explained that it's a new field of biology and showing that these environmental chemicals are much more important than most of us think. Did you see that talk with him, with Dr. Keith Nichols?
I did not watch the talk, no.
So we didn't manage to get you worried yet.
Well, so there has been a lot of talk for a long time about endocrine disruptive chemicals. It's not a new thing so much, but it's new enough that there is not a degree of research that should cause one to worry. That's the first point, is that if you actually look at the research on endocrine disruptive chemicals, there's not a consensus whatsoever that there's something to worry about. And a lot of the better research says that it's very unlikely that they're a problem on mass scale. Point number two is that mechanistically, it seems very difficult to envision how, in fact, they would potentially alter physiology to the extent that is claimed. For example, most, unless they're specially modified, most hormones get digested in the digestive tract completely and never actually affect it in your bloodstream. And most of these chemicals are included in that. So in order for them to just randomly pass through digestion unaltered, you need to take in unbelievable quantities of them that just don't occur in nature. And, you know, if we had such chemicals and they were sort of readily available enough to alter endocrine physiology, some of them would have negative effects, some of them have very positive effects. You see a lot of really jacked people going around. The thing is, if you buy a vial of testosterone, you know, as a steroid, and you drink it, you just drink $50 or something, and nothing's going to happen, which is really, really bad, because none of it gets into your bloodstream. So you have to inject it. So unless you're injecting, you know, pieces of plastic or something into your body, it's very unlikely that it's going to have the effect. And again, the evidence that such an effect is occurring is very weak. And the evidence that an effect is not occurring is pretty decent. There's potential that some of them are really a legitimate threat, so on and so forth. But that's not what the current evidence tells me. So we can worry about a lot of things, but if there's not really any good evidence for getting worried, then, you know, that's, I'm not sure why we should be worried. For example, there's a lot of data to support the fact that people's ejaculate volumes are decreasing, the percent of motile sperm is decreasing, so on and so forth. That can happen for so many reasons that do not include or potentially include endocrine disrupting chemicals that it's just crazy to speculate that this is the direct cause. In other research where people are predictably through factory environments or something exposed to more of these chemicals, like work in plastics manufacturing, they don't seem to have any of the problems that you would expect. It's really curious, Like if you work in some factory that produces something that's bad for your health or actually bad for your health, usually factory workers get more problems, But this seems not to be the case with a lot of these things. So it's one of these things that needs more research considerably, but there's just not this overwhelming amount of evidence that something really bad is happening. There's the reasons that people have less sperm, etc., so on and so forth. Here's one really interesting reason, right? So with the advent of pornography, people masturbate more than they used to. And if you jack off all the time, you don't run out of sperm, you just have less sperm all the time. You just do. So how do we know it's not that? How do we know it's not demographic shifts? Right? So here's another example. Cancer rates have been increasing for decades. Okay, so what's killing us? Nothing. We diagnose cancer better now. It used to be you just fucking died and they didn't know why. Now you got cancer and they know you got cancer, so they put it down, diagnosed with cancer, as opposed to like died of old age or some shit, or massive organ failure. Right? Another one is people's life expectancy is much higher now. They don't die from other diseases like heart attacks and stuff. And oh geez, here's a good one. They don't die of microbial infections as often, the flu, etc. They're still alive from the flu. There's an old adage in medical science: if nothing else kills you, cancer will. Is you eventually get cancer. Telomeres will clip off, and there you go. So cancer rates are super high. Imagine if we were looking for these carcinogens the entire time that are killing us, and we actually realized that, you just went to London on vacation. London 100 years ago was smokestacks everywhere, and the air quality was total shit. Now people are diagnosed with cancer more often in London than they used to be. Does that mean cancer is less, or London is less carcinogenic? It's not even close. It's the opposite. London has incredibly clean air now. It's just people live long enough to get cancer, and the diagnostics are better. So we have to have a real good, very meticulous, direct evidence that these substances are altering hormonal profiles and activities. We do not have enough of that evidence yet, not even close, to start to get really worried.
As an advanced trainee, should I still do isolation work for biceps and triceps, or do most of us get enough volume from doing back and bench chest?
Yeah, so the part one of the answer is depending on if you want your biceps and triceps to grow preferentially to other muscle groups. If you want bigger arms relatively to what you have now, then adding isolations is probably an idea to explore. Secondly, almost everyone will have to do isolation work to maximize arm hypertrophy as opposed to only doing compounds. So there's going to be some rare people that get enough arm work or are satisfied with the size of their arms just from compounds, but isolations help most people. So the answer is 90%, 95% chance that this person will benefit from isolations, and especially if they want their arms much bigger, then they almost certainly have to do isolation.
Yeah, I've been through all kinds of phases through my training career now.
Sure.
I've been dirty bulking, not paying attention to food, whatever. I have periods with small children in the house that I didn't get a lot.
How was that?
Yeah.
How was that? Was that tough?
That's rough, because with small children in the house now, they're 11, 9 and 5. But when they were babies, it's rough nights, difficult eating, a lot of stress eating as well. You really develop bad habits again when you have small children. You finish their plates.
They always eat crap.
You have to. You give them a nice cookie. They don't want it, so you eat it because you things like that. So you develop bad habits when you're. But I get rid of them again.
Not the children, I hope, just the habits.
Just the habits. Yeah.
Awesome.
But they can be useful too. Look at this kind of progressive overload.
Okay, to conclude this interview, what can viewers and listeners expect from you for the rest of this new year?
Geez, that's a fun question. So we're all, if the RP Diet app is out, and we're going to be, advertising it more as feature updates occur. We got some big feature updates to do, and it's looking really promising. And we're going to be working on other apps, and I'm not at liberty to speak about what those are. And then I'm actually, hopefully this year, we will release a book I just began to write with my colleagues, James Hoffman and Jared Feather, The Scientific Principles of Hypertrophy Training. So that's going to be super cool because it's super in-depth. I don't want to say everything you ever wanted to know, but the basics and beyond for how to get more muscle. So it's going to be a super interesting book when it comes out.
Okay, great. We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, so we're through all the questions for today, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on.
Please like and subscribe. Thank you.